So just all focus. Well, everyone say hello to Eleanor first. Hello. Thank you. And when she starts clapping, you start clapping. All right? I'll see you on the other side. Tomorrow we can make it And welcome to this year's State of London debate at Indigo at the O2. I'm James O'Brien, and the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and a dizzying collection of deputy mayors will be joining us on stage shortly. Tonight's State of London debate is an important opportunity for you, the public, to question the Mayor and his team on their policies and commitments. You will be very aware that we have a general election coming up 2 weeks today, on the 4th of July. I hope that didn't need a spoiler alert. I love the idea of there being one person in the room who's just gone, what? A general election? 2 weeks today? I should put a bet on. That means that right now we are in what is called a pre-election period, where we all have to be especially careful to comply with the rules and restrictions that apply to this meeting concerning political publicity. So we need to keep the discussion tightly focused on London and the work of the Mayor. There's no room for party political debate, for national politics, or for anything about candidates or the political parties in the general election or their manifestos. With that in mind, the evening will be split into 5 sections correlating with 5 distinct topic areas, which we will work our way through imminently. The Mayor and myself will be assisted this evening by 5 of his deputy mayors, and the first thing I would like you to do is invite you to welcome them to the stage this evening. First, we have Justine Simons, OBE, the Deputy Mayor for Culture and the Creative Industries. Behind Justine, Howard Dorber, the Deputy Mayor for Business and Growth. Dr. Debbie Weeks-Bernard is the Deputy Mayor for Communities and Social Justice. Seb Dance is the Deputy Mayor for Transport. And Sophie Linden is the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime. The first event of the evening, or the first sort of activity of the evening, if you like, will be an address from the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, directly to you. So please join me now in welcoming to the stage the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan.
Good evening. It's great to be back at the O2 for the State of London debate. Thank you, James, for hosting. Thank you all for coming tonight after the England game. For those of you who missed it, you didn't miss much. And during the BBC Question Time Leaders debate. Look, the State of London debate is a key part of London's democracy. Not only is it an opportunity for me to tell you about the brilliant programmes we're delivering from City Hall, but it's a chance for you to scrutinise me and my team by asking about the issues that matter most to you, your families and our communities. I was truly humbled to be re-elected again as the Mayor of London last month for a historic 3rd term. This is the best job in the world, in the greatest city in the world. And I couldn't be more grateful to my fellow Londoners, not only for placing their faith in me once more, but for giving my administration such a strong mandate to continue building a fairer, safer and greener London for everyone. We've made some huge strides over the last 8 years, building record numbers of council homes, delivering free school meals to all our primary school pupils, freezing TfL fares 5 times, making London a beacon for environmental and climate action the world over, putting 1,300 more police officers on our streets and creating more than 500,000 positive opportunities for young Londoners at risk of getting involved in gangs and crime. But I know there is so much more we can and must do in the years ahead, especially as the cost of living crisis continues to weigh heavily on so many. I'm acutely aware too many Londoners are struggling to make ends meet and families are being priced out of our great city. I also fear that this generation of young Londoners could be worse off than the last if they don't get the opportunities they need to fulfil their potential. That's why over the next 4 years, we'll pull out all the stops to give young people that vital helping hand in life so they have the best possible chance of making the most of their talents and prospering here in our great city. Look, I'll never forget that London gave me the opportunities to go from the council estate where I grew up to being mayor. It's why I'm more determined than ever to make sure that today's Londoners, regardless of borough or background, have that same shot at realising their ambitions. I want to ensure London becomes a byword for opportunity again. And that means supporting Londoners all the way from birth to thriving at school, getting a good job and getting a first home of their own. It won't be easy, but the last 8 years have demonstrated what we can accomplish with political will, ambition and the right values and policies. So we'll continue to set our sights high, helping and nurturing our young people and prioritising job creation, police reform and ending rough sleeping in our city by 2030. We'll also make free school meals permanent, build more council housing and new rent control homes, put more police on our streets and provide record funding for youth clubs, as well as free skills training for anyone who's unemployed or in low income. Because I believe if we do this, then London's best days can be ahead of us, and that we can make the greatest city in the world even greater still. Thank you, and we look forward to answering your questions this evening.
Thank you, Sadiq Khan. It struck me, actually, that the political mood has changed quite a lot since the last time we were here, or certainly since the first time we were here, because my father was a toolmaker has become the new my father was a bus driver, which I don't know what that says about the broader political spectrum. We will begin with transport, appropriately enough. You see, it's like I planned it. Bus driver, transport. The Mayor has already touched upon it, and I am here to direct your questions or channel whatever questions you have directly towards the Mayor of London. So if you have a question on the issue of transport, then now is the time to raise your hand and wait for the microphone to make its way to you. As you've heard, the freezing of transport for London mayors remains in place until March 2025, and various other issues as well are filed under this category. So I've got lots of hands in the air. Excuse me, it's a good job we're not on the radio. I didn't even know I had a screen. Bear with me one moment while I consult my capacious notes. Joy is in Greenwich. Where's Joy, please?
Good evening.
Hello, Joy.
I'm Joy. Hi.
I don't need to see you, to be honest. I only need to hear you. I did bring my glasses tonight. Hello, Joy. How lovely to see you.
You're better off not seeing me,
No, don't be ridiculous. You look lovely. You look lovely this evening. What is your question for the Mayor and team?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and your team. As an 84-year-old Londoner who loves my city and have lived here all my life, I'm rather saddened by the proliferation now of people riding scooters and bikes on pavements. In Oxford Street recently, I was nearly run down by one of these people, and when I challenged him, I was sworn at. Mr. Mayor, is there anything you can do about that, please? Thank you.
You weren't stabbed.
Yes.
Yes, crack on. Sorry.
Well, Joy, thanks for your question. I'll bring in Seb shortly to explain the challenges around regulation, but the short answer is we've got very little powers around scooters in relation to regulation of scooters. You're right, they are a health hazard, but actually scooters that are electric aren't allowed on pavements, and actually on our roads there are also laws in relation to that as well. The only scooters that are allowed are those that are the higher scooters, and there's regulations around that the council work on. I'll bring Seb in, the Deputy Mayor for Transport, to explain some of the lobbying we've been doing and some of the challenges that we have, because, Joy, you're not the first person to express concern about the dangers of electric scooters. Seb.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? Sorry. I think my head is too big for the microphone. Right. Can you hear me, Joy? Thank you. As the Mayor has explained, we don't have the powers to regulate scooters on the streets. That is an issue that is reserved to national government. There is, or was, I should say, a proposal for legislation to enable transit authorities like TfL to be able to regulate. We are very, very supportive of such legislation and would hope that in whichever government is elected after the general election that we have those powers then to regulate, because clearly in a public space we need to have a sensible a mix of transport options. Micro-mobility, by the way, which is this sort of collective term for things like scooters and e-bikes, does have a role to play, but we want to make sure that we have the powers and ability to properly regulate it. And actually part of that story is also enabling people to think a bit more about how they share the public realm and how they use that space, and that's got to be a really important part of the picture as well.
And Joy, linked with this is the issue of these hire bikes that are left on the pavements, and they can be an obstruction as well, particularly for older people with buggies and stuff. People just leave them on the pavements. We're again working with the councils and the government to get regulation around those. They're called dockless hire bikes. The same issue arises there as well.
Yeah. How much money are those companies making? Do we know how much? Especially Lime, which I know overtook the Santander bicycles, still very affectionately known in town as the Boris bikes. What's the sort of revenues?
They're very popular. I haven't got the figures time, but there are 4 companies ostensibly that have the dockless bikes. They're all doing very well for the reasons Seb has said. People want to have these dockless bikes. The challenge is, because they're new, the regulation is not kept up to pace in relation to this. But at the same time, those who cycle or use a scooter must follow the law. The highway code, the law is not just for those who drive, it's for those who cycle as well and those who scooter as well. And the concern is they're not following the law, and there needs to be more enforcement, and the police are alive to that. I
don't want to steal your thunder, Joy, but I get really irritated by the really fast ones that are not the hire bikes. There's a bloke coming up Chiswick High Road today as I was tootling past at a very leisurely pace on my Lime bike, and he didn't have a helmet on, and he was on I don't know whether it's been souped up, but he was moving faster than you'd expect a sort of petrol-engined moped to move, and that's incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, I think we all need to be mindful when we travel in any...
But I presume that's illegal.
That is illegal.
Yeah, but they're everywhere, these sort of...
So they're adapting the bikes so they can go extra fast.
Yes.
But also we know they've been used by organised criminals as well to nick phones as well and to do those sorts of illegal activities. This is a gap in legislation. The police are taking enforcement action where they can, but your experience, James, and Joy's, I'm afraid, is not unique. We're hearing more and more examples of this. Some cities in Europe have now banned some of these e-scooters because of the proliferation and the dangers. And we're not quite there yet, but we do need some legislation.
At least I didn't get sworn at, Joy. I am sorry for your trouble. Seb, what is the law? What's the rule on the... Because I see a lot of Deliveroo and delivery drivers on the sort of electrified bicycles. They're legal, presumably.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have different manufacturers and different standards. Some of the hire companies, by the way, with the dockless bike options, they are actually engaged in conversations with us about how they can ensure that people leave them in appropriate locations and so on. So it's not the case that they're just saying that we've got this product and it's a free-for-all, but clearly we need overarching legislation to be able to hold them to account. We just don't have that at the moment.
And obviously we can't veer into international politics, so it's just wait and see pie. Okay. Let's go next to Andrew, who's from Hammersmith and Fulham.
Hello, I'm Andrew from Hammersmith and Fulham. Why haven't you acted on the concerns of visually impaired and other disabled people regarding the existence of floating bus stops and called a halt to their continued rollout? These bus stops prevent us from using buses independently and thus bar us from independently accessing whole areas of London. A possible solution would be to bring a key solution would be for buses to pull up direct to the pavement and for cyclists to stop and wait behind the bus in the cycle lane, ensuring their safety and that of all visually impaired and disabled bus passengers and elderly bus passengers. The report which you produced on this matter does not address our accessibility needs. You have previously promised to meet personally with representatives of the National Federation of the Blind, but you have failed to do so. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Andrew. It's a very detailed question. Could I ask how you personally have been affected? How has your day-to-day existence been affected by the arrival of these floating bus stops?
As I said, but I also use Chiswick as a shopping centre. There's a bus stop that I used to use very regularly, and I can no longer do that because I have to cross a cycle lane to get onto the pavement. And I find that I've attempted to do it, and it's confusing because when you look for the crossing, there's a danger that you cross into a cycle lane. Yes. So I end up going a further stop further on, and as a result I think that is a breach of my human rights, and it means that I'm having to walk further, and sometimes, as we know, recently that it rains a hell of a lot, so it's not that convenient.
It's not fair. It's definitely not fair.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it the one near Sainsbury's?
It's the one near Marks and Spencer's in Chiswick.
Yeah, okay. So I'm sort of in between the two. I know the one you mean.
What I end up doing is going to the one which is nearer Sainsbury's and walk back.
Got it.
But it adds extra time to my journey, and
the reason I ask is not just to show my grasp of the granular detail of all the issues facing Londoners at the moment, but also as someone who is not visually impaired, the one you refer to near Marks and Spencer's, it can be quite intimidating. And these are replicated all over London, Seb, where if you are visually impaired, there is nothing you can do. You cannot get to that bus stop because it involves stepping into a channel that is owned by cyclists, effectively, doesn't it?
So even worse over in the East End, in Walthamstow and so on, which are really
another reason
extremely dangerous.
Another reason to stay in West London, Andrew. I think.
Who's got money for that?
No, I can't condone that comment. Look, first of all, I've met the NFB UK twice, and I'm very happy to continue meeting. Absolutely, this is a core issue, and it goes right to the heart of the idea of co-design. And it's very important that the infrastructure that we have, we design in collaboration with users and with people who are directly affected by the implications of the designs that we put in. We should remember that segregated cycleways have saved an enormous number of lives in our city. Having a situation where the cycle network has trebled in size has enabled many more people to take up cycling, and it has enabled more sustainable travel around our city. That being said, there are clearly issues with some of the designs that we have. Not all of the designs by any means. In fact, the review that the Mayor commissioned has shown that there have been very few, only 4 collisions at these bus stops. But, of course, we have a Vision Zero in place, which is a vision for a plan for 0 injuries and deaths on our road network, on our transport network, and so 4 is unacceptable. So, of course, I want to work with all groups to ensure that that co-design is right.
So what do we think
we get aspects of design, by the way, that operate in many other countries as well.
Okay, so you might be able to tell me what it will look like, what is currently a curb, cycle lane curb, bus stop.
Yeah.
What will it look like?
Well, in common with design that you have when crossing any street, for example, you would have tactile paving, you would have clearly indicated crossing points for cyclists, who, by the way, like everybody else on the road, has to obey the law, which is to stop at a crossing, and to have other features that are standard design to enable partially sighted and blind people to be able to access the public realm like everybody else, as of course they should.
So it's a work in progress. I sense Andrew won't be overcome with satisfaction from your answer.
Just to add that we were hoping for a personal meeting, and what we've had the opportunity to do previously is ask questions like this at Mayor's Question Time in City Hall. I don't call that an answer to the question for request for a personal meeting.
Well, keep in touch. Let me know. So can we arrange that?
I am very happy, as always,
Yeah.
to have one-to-one meetings. No barrier at all.
if, with your permission, next time I see you in Chiswick, I'll check in, Andrew, and find out whether or not
you're very welcome.
This meeting has been arranged. I think we've got a question now from Dee, who hails from Lambeth. Dee, what would you like to ask?
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening. As part of the Let's Do Fridays off-peak trial, older Londoners were able to use their travel concessions to make vital journeys before 9 a.m. on a weekday for the first time in 4 years. Was the trial a success? And if so, when will the trial measure be made permanent?
Dee, thanks for your question. So the short answer, just to remind those that haven't got the over 60s pass, during the pandemic, when Londoners did the right thing and stayed at home and stopped using public transport, our fares completely fell through the ground. So we needed the government support to keep public transport going. A condition of that deal was they asked us to get rid of all free travel for over 60s, all times of the day, 7 days a week, and all free travel for those below the age of 18. I said no to that, and they said, well, you've got to find the money somewhere else. And so we decided to use council tax to pay for free travel for under 18, free travel for those above the age of 60. Unfortunately, we couldn't quite stretch it to free travel between the rush hours of 6:30 and 9:30, as you've mentioned. That costs about £40 million. During the off-peak trial for 3 months, we have allowed those above the age of 60 to use on Fridays public transport. That trial's come to an end. TfL are now looking at the numbers, but also TfL are speaking to businesses in London to see what difference the off-peak trial made to them as well, because the rest of the world also is a challenge getting people back into the centres, whether it's LA, New York, Paris. So everyone's interested in the success or otherwise of this trial. The pre-election period has slowed things down a bit, but I'd hope in the next couple of months we'd have the results of the off-peak trial.
So it's give and take. It's designed both to help the people in the relevant cohort, but also to bring more activity into town.
The main reason is the second reason you said.
I didn't realise
a benefit is those above the age of 60 can on Fridays do what they used to do, which is use free travel before the time of 9:30. That's if you like, an additional benefit. That wasn't the main reason. The main reason was to see if we can stimulate public transport travel. To give you an idea of the challenge, Dee, on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, basically public transport's back to what it was pre-pandemic. Monday's not bad, around 85%. Friday goes down to 70-odd%, so we're seeing if we can get it back to pre-pandemic numbers. Weekend is more than 100%, and that was the idea behind it. An additional benefit was people like you got the chance to do what you didn't before, which is travel before 9:30.
Can I ask a silly question? If you've got a pass, why does it cost more to use it a bit earlier in the morning than it would if you were making the same journey later in the day?
Because it's the fares lost by those above the age of 60 who otherwise are working. So a lot of people above the age of 60 work. So if you
okay, so they're going in anyway.
Exactly. One of the points the government made is no other part of the country has this. Why have you got it? And I was quite keen to keep it. The one thing we couldn't quite afford was that somebody heckled money. Yeah, the money. We couldn't afford the money, right? It's a choice: get rid of it altogether, or do what another part of the country does and keep it for the entire week, 7 days a week, say for Monday to Friday before 9:30.
Thank you, Dee, as well. Before we move on to policing and safety, a quick word. My email box is always full of people saying I don't ask enough questions about the Silvertown tunnel. BBC's reported recently that it could cost between £3 and £5 each way for a normal car when it opens in summer of 2025. So is it still on schedule, and is that figure accurate?
Yeah, so the figure they're using is the figure that Boris Johnson gave in 2012 when he first gave the green light for this tunnel. So that's the figure that's in the public domain. No figures have been set. What TfL will do is consult in relation to the figure.
But there will be a toll.
Oh yeah, that was the plan that Boris Johnson began, which I followed through. What we've done is change the plan by having 2 lanes reserved for buses, but also to give concessions and discounts for local people, and to have air quality monitors making sure that the air quality improves as a consequence of this new tunnel, rather than gets worse.
And when do the tolls come in on the Blackwall tunnel? That's next year as well.
Same time as the Silvertown tunnel. That was the original plan. When you build this new tunnel and have a user charge, at the same time you have a user charge for the Victorian Blackwall tunnel, both at the same time, to avoid displacement, which can cause perverse consequences.
Okay, and that concludes the section on transport. Thank you for your excellent questions. We move on now to... well, I mean, you could have submitted a question earlier. Okay, I'll ask away. No, I'll take a question on you, Les. That's fine. Yeah?
Perfectly good vehicle, yeah? Perfectly good vehicle.
Yeah.
Now, I've got an old banger that I'm driving around in. Now, I like changing my number plates. It's a compliant vehicle, right? It's compliant.
I need a question with respect.
Yeah, I'm telling you a question.
Go on, then.
Every time I change the plate, I get bombarded with fines,
Yeah.
to say that I've got a non-compliant vehicle when it is compliant. I have to spend a month sending in representations, and then when I change the plate again, it starts all over again.
Why do you keep changing your plate on a car?
Because I like changing plates. I've got personal plates.
I've got the solution to your problem.
Oh, don't buy plates. That's fucking obvious, wasn't it?
Don't change the plates. Can we have a serious question on the same subject, please? Yes, madam. Carry on.
I thought this was going to be a hands-up debate, not prepared questions.
Well, to be fair, it's a good
Okay.
job it isn't. Otherwise, it would take 10 minutes to get every
Okay,
question out.
according to you, Mr. Khan, only a small minority of cars are non-compliant. What are you going to do for the money when you'll finally drive out all the older cars and vulnerable drivers off the road? You promised no pay per mile, but you also promised no ULEZ extension, and look what happened there. Destroyed business, lives, especially the elderly and vulnerable. Can we believe anything you say when it comes to road transport?
We have got a section on air quality and environment coming up, which is why your questions weren't included already. But if you want to take that now, Sadiq Khan, that's absolutely fine. Well, if you be quiet, he can start trying.
So you'll be pleased to know that the last time we checked the figures, 95% of vehicles are now compliant with the ULEZ and therefore don't pay a penny but see the benefits of cleaner air. We increased the amount of money in the scrappage scheme, so it's £210 million. Anybody in London who's got a non-compliant vehicle can apply to that scheme to get a compliant vehicle. And the great thing...
I'm just about to reach for my heckle alarm. I'm trying to listen to the answer that he got. To be honest, I'm still completely fascinated by why you change the number plates on your car so often. But I'll find out afterwards. If we could continue with the answer and have a little less interruption, please. Thank you.
And the good news is that roadside emissions across London, central, inner and outer London, have reduced by around 50%. So it's cleaner air. So it's cleaner air.
I think we'll return to this when we get to air quality and the environment, and we'll be welcome to include more questions. I would say I can't. No one can hear you, even I think probably the person next to you. That there was an election relatively recently, and so we're going for the fiddle the election line now. Okay, it's not just plates that you need to change, perhaps. Let's move on to policing and safety and take a question first from Dinesh, who is in Lewisham. Dinesh, your question, please. Why does he get a round of applause like that? Oh, up with Lewisham, come on. Yes. Dinesh, when you're ready. I'm glad to hear it. Dinesh, when you're ready.
So the question I actually want to ask is about knife crime is really out of control. Just very recently, we've heard that two 12-year-old boys managed to get their hands on machetes. Panel, this is out of control. And is it time now that you put something in place that you need to have a license for this, so that to prove that they actually do need these knives? And are you going to stop these knives being put into the system? As a person with a disability who loves London, I don't feel safe. What are you going to do?
So
we're talking about the specifically
machetes. What
you might call obnoxious knives, like zombie knives or machetes, that there is no earthly reason anybody should be carrying around in London. I am getting a bit bored of the heckling, partly because I can't hear the answers and partly because people have come along tonight to hear the Mayor of London and the Deputy Mayor talk, not you. And I apologise if that offends your ego or your sensibilities, but carry on and you'll be taking an early bath, to use a football analogy.
Dinesh, thanks for your question, and I can understand why you're scared when you see these weapons. There can be no justification for having a machete, a zombie knife and the like. So since 2016, so you need legislation to ban these knives. You can buy them on the internet. You can buy them from retail shops and so forth. So we've been trying to get the government to legislate to ban these knives, because what possible reason can there be in London to have these knives? I can appreciate if you're in the Amazon jungle, you may need these big knives to knock down the forest trees you're going through them, but there's no reason in London at all. To give some credit to the government, Home Secretaries have talked about banning these knives. They haven't so far. And so what we're hoping is the next government will ban these machete knives, these zombie knives, these long knives. I mean, Sophie and I have been on weapon sweeps, Dinesh, where we found these knives hidden away in bushes, where people have left them there because they worry that maybe stops and search could be found, and they go back there to grab these machete knives and zombie knives. So the first thing is to change the law, to outlaw these knives. The second thing is to make sure we teach young people that actually if they carry a knife, they're not making themselves more safe, they're making themselves less safe. And so it's got to start early in relation to education of young people as well. One of the things that Sophie and the Violence Reduction Unit is working on is going into schools using a public health approach to make sure young people understand the dangers of carrying any knife, not just a zombie knife or a machete, but even a kitchen knife they could leave home with because they think it gives them respect or makes them safe. And we do need more police. Somebody heckled out, we need more police. Yes, we do need more police. We've had police officer numbers going down for a number of years. We've had youth clubs closed down over a number of years. We need more things for young people to do, more constructive things for young people to do, and good police using the law properly to get these knives off our streets.
What about the shops, Sophie Linden? I mean, the sort of other end of the telescope. Could there not be more provision in shops of what they can and can't sell?
So we do work with trading standards officers across London around working with shops so that they check the age of those people coming in to buy knives. 'Cause it's really important that is, you get checked for alcohol, you should get checked for knives. And we've also been working and calling for much tougher regulation on online sales, because it's not just the shops. You can quite easily buy some of these really horrendous knives and just kitchen knives, and they can be delivered to you with no proper checks. And it's a real issue. We do need much better regulation, and the online platforms need to take some responsibility about who they are sending those knives to and the types of knives that they're sending out, because at the moment it is too easy to buy really dangerous knives either online, and we are working with shopkeepers and trading standards officers to really try to regulate that better.
I'm always struck by how the figures stay surprisingly steady. I think 2015 there were 120. The early figures for 2023 suggest about 110, which is broadly down with the 2022 figure. The peak in 2019 was 153. So if it were a graph, it would be fairly steady, which suggests that nothing you're doing is working.
So the ONS, the most recent figures from the ONS, that's the Office for National Statistics, says violence in London is the least across the country. So you're less likely to be the victim of violence in London than the rest of the country, and you're less likely to be...
Well, hang on a minute, because if you say liar, I will have you removed. The Office of National Statistics is considerably more reliable than your Twitter feed, madam. I can tell you categorically that the populations in Bedfordshire, Cleveland, Merseyside, West Mercia, South Yorkshire, Humberside and Northumbria are all ranked higher in 2023-2024 than London is.
And you're also less likely to be injured because of violence in London as well, but it's still too high. Look, Dinesh is scared. He's not lying, he's scared. So we can't pretend he's not scared. And so one knife crime is one knife crime too many. One zombie knife is one zombie knife too many. So it's no consolation to Sophie and me, or when we speak bereaved parents saying, oh, it's less bad in London than other parts of the country. So Dinesh, you're right. I understand why you're scared. I get it. And that's why we're going to carry on, supporting young people, investing in youth clubs, but also being quite clear about the need for enforcement.
Although I think some Londoners are increasingly irritated by the portrayal on social media and by some political actors of our city, a city that we love, as having a bigger problem with some of these issues than elsewhere in the population. I don't know if you can be patriotic about a town, but it offends many of our sensibilities, and it's something that's popping up increasingly on my LBC show.
But on that point, James...
Well, I have a catchphrase which some of you will be familiar with. This isn't an opinion, it's counting.
No, I mean, with your permission, I wouldn't mind bringing in Debbie now, because what the frustration is, you don't just demonise an entire city, but you demonise young people, and particularly, young black Londoners as well. And it's really important we understand, actually, it's young people who are more likely to be the victim of this sort of stuff. And I'll bring in Debbie, but you look at homicides per capita, we're fewer homicides in London than Paris, Madrid, Barcelona, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, and many other cities across the globe. But Debbie, do you want to explain the consequences to young people in relation to this labelling, in relation to their confidence to go out and about?
Well, I mean, I think it's obviously very apparent how it impacts young people. It increases their fear, and it also makes them feel as though they are seen as unworthy, that people consider young people to be violent, and it's really important for us to make sure that the narrative that we share amongst ourselves as adults is a responsible one, because it has an impact on young people. And I think what the Mayor and Sophie have said, importantly, about what we need to do to protect our young people is, importantly, to prevent them from getting involved in crime in the first place. And a lot of the work that we are seeking to do at City Hall is about prevention. It's about giving them opportunities. It's about giving them purpose. It's about giving them meaningful things to do. The VRU does an awful lot of that. Some of the work that my teams do in community sports engages them in diversion activities, giving them things to do on their weekends, in their school holidays, at all times when the risk to them of either becoming a victim of crime or perhaps becoming a perpetrator because of all of the other reasons that young people get involved in crime, we need to do what we can to prevent that from happening. So it's really important for us to tackle the drivers early on, and also for us to act responsibly in the way that we talk about young people.
Next question is from Nicholas, who is from Barnet. Nicholas, when you're ready.
Hello, Mr. Khan and his team. Good evening. I have a question to ask you about what measure have you introduced to prevent more terrorist attacks in London, like after the Manchester Arena attacks in 2017, and what the English defend themselves, like Israel has been doing over the last year, after the Hebron terrorist attack on October 7th, with the media being anti-Israel and causing the pro-Palestinian, pro-Israel protests.
You're not suggesting that we send the army anywhere?
No. What measures will be done?
So what measures are we taking against terror attacks that have been enhanced since the Manchester Arena terror attack?
Nicholas, it's a really good question, because, look, we know, unfortunately, London's a target for terrorists. The phrase used by the Commissioner and the head of counter-terror, it's their phrase, not mine, is unfortunately the best way to think about this is not a question of if, but when, because that gives us the right attitude to make sure we're safe. And so, unfortunately, we also know, James, as Nicholas was alluding to, when there are tensions in the Middle East, it can sometimes spill over into our country. And other great cities across Europe are also worried about this. So the first thing is all of us have got to be vigilant. We've all got to make sure if we see something suspicious, if we see a change of behaviour, if we see something lying about, like a bag, we report it. Err on the side of caution. We're also, Sophie, Debbie and I, investing a lot of money in young people and great groups that work with young people to stop them being radicalised in the first place. So when somebody comes along who's a charismatic preacher of hate, or somebody comes along who's, a certain sort of view and tries to indoctrinate young people, they're resilient to reject those sorts of hateful messages. And we've been in schools, colleges, doing some really good work with young people to avoid what could happen if they're not properly understand how to reject these sorts of messages. Then there's the enforcement side in relation to the Manchester attack. So the great lesson we've learned from there that we used in London was called grey areas. This is where the arena, so the arena's the security is responsible for the arena. Further away is the police, but in between there are grey areas. Who's responsible for those? And in the coronation, we used the lessons from Manchester Arena to make sure all of London was safe, because there are lots of grey areas, because we've got to learn the lessons from unfortunate attacks that happen, because just like the bad guys are evolving to find new ways to harm us, we've got to find and evolve new ways to keep us safe. And to reassure you, the Met Police Service speaks to colleagues across the globe to learn best practice, not just in Manchester, but around the world, about things we can do, including what's on the internet, what's online, and so forth. And the experts have said publicly, I'm not breaching confidences, James, the next attack will probably be a lone perpetrator. He or she's been radicalised either online or because of what's going elsewhere, and so we've all got to be vigilant about this sort of stuff.
Are you aware of any intelligence suggesting the threat has increased as a direct consequence of the current warfare in
I'll bring Sophie in. So both the head of counter-terror has talked about this and his concerns in relation to this. He's a chap called Matt Dukes. And in fact, so has the government in relation to their concerns around November, December, have talked about this, as indeed other cities have as well.
Sophie.
I mean, the threat level hasn't been increased because of it, but I was just going to add one other thing is that there's obviously trying to prevent, especially, prevent people from going into extremism and into violence. And there's the fantastic work that Sadiq's already talked about. We've reached over 100,000 young people with that work. I've sat in those lessons. I've learned things. They're fantastic lessons and really engaging for the young people. But what's been really important in the last 2 times that Sadiq has been elected, he has commissioned reviews into making sure that London is prepared, so making sure that all the partners understand what their role is, are there any vulnerabilities, and there's been 2 reviews and all those recommendations have been followed through, and again this time we are also going to be looking at how we can make sure that London is prepared, so that we try to make sure that the worst doesn't happen, but we make sure that we are ready just in case.
I just noticed, bearing in mind where you're from, I've got to say this, irrespective of what's happening in the Middle East, there is no excuse for either anti-Semitism or Islamophobia.
Take a question now from Dominic, who is from Croydon. Dominic, when you're ready.
Hello. Hello, Mr. Mayor. 2 years ago, I stood here and I asked you what you were doing to stem the disproportionality in misconduct against black police officers. I'm a serving police officer. Since then, I've gotten several misconducts, one of them for simply asking you this question. The Casey Review openly acknowledged and condemned the systemic racism, and my black colleagues have seen similar treatment. I would now call it a witch hunt. I ask you again, what are you going to do to keep us safe?
So, I think you were sitting further back when you asked the question a couple of years ago. Yeah. I'm going to bring in Sophie and Debbie, who sit on the London Policing Board, which is one of the lessons, one of the recommendations from Casey to address some of the issues that we discussed a couple of years ago when you asked your question. A couple of years ago, if you remember, Casey hadn't been asked to do her report. There was no finding from Dame Louise Casey that the police, in her words, was institutionally racist, institutionally homophobic and institutionally sexist as well. One of the recommendations she made was there to be a board that sits in public with expertise on that board. There are many experts on that board to support the police, but importantly hold them to account. Sophie and Debbie have been working on the issue of disproportionality, in particular in relation to the police service. Sophie meets regularly with the Black Police Association and other representative groups in the police service to address the very issues Dominic you've raised, but also that others have raised as well. I can't obviously talk about your individual case, but I'll bring Sophie in to address the issue of what's changed over the last 2 years.
But before that, will you get another disciplinary now for asking this question again?
Most definitely.
Okay. Well, let's hear from Sophie Linden, and then I'll come back to you, Dominic, I promise.
Black Police Officers Association and the National Black Police Officers Association have said categorically black officers shouldn't join the Metropolitan Police. No one should join. No black person should join. They can't keep them safe.
That's an outrageous state of affairs.
I've met Andy George, who's the national head of the Black Police Association. I meet with him regularly, as I do with the Met Black Police Association. And I absolutely recognise what you're raising. That many black officers within the Metropolitan Police don't feel that they're treated fairly, and that was clearly set out in the Casey Review, which, by the way, was a review that Sadiq asked for and Sadiq made sure happened, but in order to be able to really bring out into the light what was happening within the Met in relation to, and we all know that Louise Casey found institutional misogyny and racism and homophobia within the Metropolitan Police. What we're doing about that, and it might sound a little bit bureaucratic, a London Policing Board, is really making sure we've got the experts that can hold the Metropolitan Police to account, but also working with them to work out where are those issues and making sure that they get rid of those officers who are making those decisions which are discriminatory. And that really has increased, hasn't it, over the last, since Mark Rowley, the new Commissioner of the Met, came in, that the number of police officers who have been dismissed has significantly increased, and the number of police officers who have been suspended has also significantly increased.
And yet didn't Mark Rowley refuse to meet with Andy George over his concerns? After that call that Dominic refers to.
He has met with Andy.
He has subsequently
met with Andy.
It was certainly reported in February that he'd refused.
Yeah, no, it did, and he has met with him.
Did you tell him to, or did he arrive at that decision independently?
The Commissioner arrives at the decision himself as to who he meets, and he has met with Andy George.
He's going to be here in 2 years' time asking you the same question, isn't he?
Well, I genuinely hope, I'm always happy to be asked questions by you, but I genuinely hope that in 2 years' time there will be significant progress within the Metropolitan Police. And we won't just say, oh, there has been progress, because one of the recommendations of the Casey Review was to bring within 2 years, to make sure that there was a check-in review. And part of Sadiq's manifesto was we're going to make sure that, it would be from March onwards, that we put that health check in and we can see whether there has been progress. I don't think it will be solved, it takes time, but we'll be able to see whether there has been progress and independently evaluated.
But we are, to be clear, unless something else has changed, and it may well have done, we are living in a city where the National Black Police Association is calling for officers from ethnic minority backgrounds to boycott the police service.
That's right. Officers, you mean people not to join?
Yeah, I beg your pardon, recruits, to boycott the service. Ethnic minority recruits.
He has said that, and I know that many of you may not agree, but I would urge people from all communities to apply to the Metropolitan Police. They are recruiting. You need to be the change. The Met will only change if it reflects Londoners as well.
Sorry, but what I would say is, if you said you had trouble trying to understand where the issues were, I can tell you them. It's the professional standards. The people that investigate the officers are the problem. They haven't. There is no oversight for them. Who do they answer to? No one. They do what they want.
So
I'm going to get misconduct for saying this. Everyone here would say this is ridiculous.
I don't want to get you into trouble.
I don't know. I don't mind.
No, I know.
I don't mind.
I'm not telling him to be quiet. I'm just telling him to be sure that he wants to say whatever he's going to say that will get him into trouble.
I'm always in trouble.
I agree.
Because I'm outspoken. But to be honest, if you ask any officer, and it doesn't matter what colour they are, they will tell you misconduct is so disproportionate, but the way they treat you, you'll be off for years. Just imagine you're paying me for 4 years, 200 grand to sit at home. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry.
So there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things in what you've said. The time it takes for those complaints to go through is unacceptable, because it means that good officers are waiting for judgment on whatever complaint has come through. That is unacceptable, and they need to bring that timeliness down. And we are checking on that, around that timeliness. But the second thing is, where is that disproportionality coming in? And we know through research that we've done through the Mayor's Office of Policing Crime and from the Casey Review that the disproportionality comes, white officers are far less likely to be put into the misconduct system than black officers. There is absolute disproportionality there. So that's what I was talking about, is what the Metropolitan Police needs to understand is why is that happening? Because once black officers are in the misconduct system and they are disproportionately put in, our research shows that they are basically treated fairly once they're within the misconduct system. So it's who's going in.
Well, I knew you were going to get back up again. We've got to crack on. I've got 3 more topic areas to get through.
Please, just last one.
Carry on.
That clearly shows to me, so you said this to me last time,
I did.
that shows that it is the people investigating. It's not hard. If you can see the disproportionality, and then it balances itself out once they get seen by the legally qualified chairs, and they go to gross misconduct, or someone else sees it outside of professional standards, then clearly the problem is professional standards. They're doing something wrong.
So it's, from our research, it's the supervisors and line managers that make the decision to refer to formal misconduct, which then is a formal misconduct process, which is the Directorate of Professional Standards. So the line managers within the front line or wherever they are making those decisions, and those decisions are disproportionately to put black officers into the formal misconduct system.
Investigate. The Professional Standards Unit can choose to say this is wrong or this is right. They do that.
So they mark their own homework, in a sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll sit down now.
No, well, I mean, ring in next time he's in the studio. Give us a ring. Give us an update. I want to clarify my clarification. I was right the first time. The boycott is for ethnic minority officers from other forces to boycott the Metropolitan Police, I think. And that's a terrible state of affairs that shames us all. I'm sorry, I have to crack on with the... Okay. No one can hear you except me, so we'll get a microphone to you. Yes? Okay. Well, okay. Well, you're just using up the time that people have set aside for other questions. Yeah, I know. We're going to hear it.
Excuse me, sir. I will drop everything that I've got to say before. My name is Sharon. I'm from Islington. The reason I'm amazed to see you from Mayor's office is because I live in Islington, and I've had 3 to 4 years where I've been let down by everybody, including the police. The Safe the Neighbourhood team, 3 of them, police officers 999, stalking, harassment, and it's great to hear about the police officers, how they feel. What about the actual person who's actually calling the police? Yeah, and the police don't come.
I do need to just gently nudge you towards a question if you've got a question.
The point what
they
I'm
won't be
trying
able
to
to
say,
comment on individual cases.
the point what I'm trying to say is,
thank you, Sharon.
You are actually for the Mayor's office. What are you actually going to do for borough police who fail the victim?
What can
I'm
you do?
the victim, and I've been failed by the police who don't come, who don't want to do an MRI, which is a Marek meeting, who don't want to come, who think it's quite funny. And at the end of the day, I've actually given up hope. That's why I've come here today. I've come here today because I've had a nearly 3 to 4 year campaign that now the police are treating me like a joke.
No.
Don't apologise.
Don't, I mean...
No, don't apologise.
I simply don't know about your case. What we can do is take your details. Please don't go away. James's team will come and see you.
Please stop apologising. If you don't stop apologising, I'm going to apologise for all the apologising that you're doing.
James,
we will get details to you now, and this will be put... you will hear from the Mayor's office.
If one of your team could please get the details.
Yeah, we're on the case now, and I'm sorry for your trouble. I really am, Sharon. Thank you for being so articulate as well. Stop apologising, Sharon. Thank you. Let's move on to uncontroversial territory now. We're going to do air quality and the environment. The first question comes from Paul in Bexley. Paul, what would you like to ask? And I'm not going to be able to do any more microphones into the audience now because we're going to be bang out of time. I do apologise.
Hello.
Hello, Paul.
I, like many other people, watched TV, and leading up to when the ULEZ was extended, all the adverts, do you call them adverts or propaganda or what, I don't know, kept saying about the pollution and the climate change emergency. And that was up till August when the ULEZ was, expanded. Since then, we haven't seen anything on TV or anything at all about it. So, was it propaganda? Yes. Also, one last thing. When you mentioned about Silvertown Tunnel, Boris did put it through as an idea, but all the planning has been done by Sadiq Khan.
Just to clarify on what the question is, you're asking why the advertising surrounding the imminent introduction of ULEZ stopped after ULEZ was introduced?
Correct. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of obvious, mate.
But we haven't heard anything. There's been no information.
But it's happened now, so the advertising campaign...
So the emergency's over.
So what's the question?
Is the emergency over? Are we in a
climate... No, ULEZ has been introduced.
Are we still in a climate emergency?
Yes, we are. Any other questions?
Why haven't we heard anything from the Mayor's office?
Pardon?
Why haven't we heard anything from the Mayor's office?
About ULEZ being
since
introduced?
August. No, I'm not talking about
ULEZ. Okay, you can answer that question if you want.
So what TfL and City Hall try and do is, before something happens, make the public aware something's about to happen. And so in advance of August, because the ULEZ was going to be expanded for the first time to go to outer London, which is new to drivers in outer London, there were adverts letting people know that the ULEZ was going to outer London, so if their vehicle was non-compliant, they'd have to pay the fine, or £12.50 to avoid paying the fine, but also explaining the reasons why we're encouraging people to get a compliant vehicles and to apply for the scrappage scheme. Now, clearly, once the ULEZ came in, the advert stayed for a little while longer to let people know, but because the scheme is in and people know about it, there's now no need to have adverts letting people know the ULEZ is going to come in, because the past tense rather than the future tense or present.
But to be absolutely clear, it doesn't mean that the climate emergency is over. So I'm glad we've cleared that up. Let's move on to another question now from Miyu, who's in Redbridge. Miyu, what would you like to ask?
I'm interested in your clean air policy. I just wonder how you encourage the Londoner to decomponize their home.
Great question. So one of the things that we know is that particulate matter, PM 2.5 is the jargon, and nitrogen oxide is in the air outside, but it goes indoors as well. And so what we're doing is, in a number of schools across London, we from City Hall are paying for air quality filters to be inside the classrooms to make sure the air is clean inside the classroom, because kids play in the playground. Air's improved there because of ULEZ, but air's still not perfect. In fact, we're still in breach of the World Health Organization guidelines. And what we're doing is we're trying to encourage, by clean air being in schools, by air quality filters. If that's a success, we'll be rolling out air quality filters across schools, maybe hospitals and so forth. The key thing we've got to do is make people aware. This is the second biggest killer globally, except for tobacco, in terms of deaths prematurely. And so we've got to make people aware. You can't see the stuff. You can't see PM 2.5. You can't see nitrogen oxide, but it leads to premature deaths. It leads to children having stunted lungs, adults with asthma, cancer, heart disease, and other issues. And that education is really important. And just to reassure you, we've now got hundreds of sensors across London, and these sensors tell us when the air is good and when it's bad and when it's average. And you can go to the website to see how good or bad it is in Redbridge, where you live, on different days. Because some days I'd encourage you, if you've got asthma, not to go for a run on certain roads, because it will exacerbate your asthma, or if you've got a young baby and so forth. So being aware of this stuff.
Right. Can we say goodbye? Hey, don't forget when you get home, when you get home, don't forget to change the number plate on your car. Security, please. Carry on. Take care. Going home to tuck your number plates into bed tonight. Give them a little kiss. Sleep tight. Final question on this. We move on. No, Matilda in Croydon, please. Another question on the air quality and environment issue.
The Mayor and
No, I'm not taking any more questions from the floor for reasons that have just been made, I think, pretty clear. The reward I got for being so generous last time was tossed nonchalantly back into my face. So the next question will come from Matilda, who is from Croydon.
Hello, Mayor and your team. We run a food bank in Croydon. And first of all, I just want to say thank you for introducing us to Fair Share. I had a phone call a few years ago to say they've heard about us and they want to help. So they connected us to Fair Share and is helping the community a lot. Every week we feed about 100 to 150 people queuing outside our door. Now our problem is the van we had donated by the co-op it broke down and we had to apply for the scheme, the scrap scheme. Unfortunately, they turned us down, so we haven't got van, we haven't got the grant. They refused to give us the grant, so we haven't got transport. The volunteers are using their cars.
Is this because the van broke down?
Yeah, because we're paying £12.50.
Okay.
Yeah,
got it. So what can we do to help?
What can you do to help us? Because we're paying every time we're using the van because of the ULEZ.
Understood.
and then the van broke down, so we don't have money to fix
Understood.
it, and we can't do much about it, but we need to feed the people. So
Okay.
how can you help us?
So-
They've turned us down on the grant.
Understood. So Matilda, two things. Firstly, my staff can see where you're sitting. When this finishes, I'll come over to you, take your details, and we will give you the support to change your van, number one. Number two, thank you so much for what you do. It's people like you. People like you that make me so proud of our great city for the work you do as a volunteer. So we'll speak to you afterwards and we'll make sure we sort that van out.
And if he doesn't, you let me know, Camilla. All right? Seriously. Can you just be quiet, please? Seriously. Okay, mate.
Can I do this?
Yeah, of course you can.
Look, the election on May the 2nd, the number one issue the Conservative Party stood on, and by the way, they're a Reform Party, it was the number one issue, and the only issue, they had leaflets delivered across the entire city. They wanted the election on May the 2nd to be a referendum on the ULEZ. That was the issue. And let me tell you, Londoners gave me a record-breaking, history-making victory on May the 2nd. So, now, you either believe in democracy, sir, or you don't. And this great country of ours believes in democracy. I'm not sure about you.
So, do you know, when I was young, I toyed with the idea of becoming a teacher. But I thought I'd struggle to control the sort of verbally incontinent children. And now I know what they grow up to be. Let's move on now, and I apologise, Matilda, I just called you Camilla, because I've got a Camilla on the way on the housing question, but the first one is Diane, who's from Thamesmead. Diane, what would you like to say?
Hi, my name's Diane, and I'm 22 years old, and I currently live at home. And I would love one day to have my own place in London, but I feel like a lot of young Londoners have lost hope. So what are your plans to help young Londoners own a home one day?
So, I mean, Diane, this is the number one issue, in my view, the number one crisis facing our city, housing and a lack of affordable housing for your generation. In my opening speech, I referred to my fear that your generation would be less well off than James and mine generation, and that is a problem for a successful city. So the short answer is we've got to be building much more affordable homes in London than we've ever done in our history. So this is not an issue that's been the last 10 years in the making. For the last 30 years, we've not built enough homes. Actually, since the 1970s, James. Since the 1970s was the last decade, and London built the homes that we need as a city. And so what we've got to do is to build affordable homes. Now, I can't talk about the event happening on July the 4th for the reasons James has said, but if one of the parties wins, they've promised to build...
No, you can't do that. You can't say, I'm not going to talk about it and then talk about it.
I tried. I tried.
Let me remind you that you've been Mayor of London for quite a long time. So,
I'll deal with my record if you want me to, but that doesn't deal with Diane's challenge.
Well, just
my
don't
record
even
is...
mention the July the 4th event.
Sure. So I'm hoping help comes on July the 4th, but let me deal with my record, which is the point James is leading me to. So look, it's no comfort to you, Diane, that we've broken records. We've built more council homes than any time since the 1970s. We've had more completions than any time since the 1930s, but it's not enough. It's not enough. Because
it's the biggest single thing that you could do. And let's just not reference any events or any parties or any policies or politics, but if you had all the power in the world, what would you do? What would change Diane's life in time for her to benefit from the policy change?
What could happen now is the ability to freeze rents. So the private rents keep on going up. That's the first. Then short term, that help you overnight because the rents won't be going up as much. The second thing we could do that help you overnight is to stop foreign investors buying homes as gold bricks as investments.
Can you do that in law now?
I can't. What I can do, which I'm doing, is I give first dibs to Londoners. So any home that costs less than £350,000, the first 3 months, exactly, that's the point. That's the point. And so for the first 3 months, only Londoners can have access to those homes. But what we need to do is a third point, Diane. We've got to just increase the supply. As long as the supply is not meeting demand, prices are going to go up, rent and buying. And my fair, Diane, is you will at some stage decide to leave London because you can't afford to stay in the city you love. And that's a problem for us because that's a brain drain for our city. We need you to stay. And that's why, we can't talk about it. We need a change in government.
Well, it's you that gets into trouble for that, not me. Camilla is in West London. Camilla, what's your question? Hi,
Camilla. Good evening. I'm 10 years older than our previous lady. I've just had a baby. Both me and my partner, thank you. Both me and my partner earn fairly good salaries in the 40s, and still we are stuck in a tiny one-bedroom flat, unable to afford a two-bedroom. And I work for the NHS. I'm a nurse. And honestly, I've given up working. I don't want to work for the NHS. I'm not paid enough. I'm doing overtime I do overtime roughly once a week. So that's 12 hours every single week, every single month, just to pay my bills, just to not be able to afford to live in London. How is building affordable houses in the next 10, 15 years going to help me and my child and my family?
So, Camilla, you won't be surprised that, your story is a common story amongst Londoners, and you know this from your friends who are similar age to you and your colleagues at the NHS where you work. Actually, homes, once you've got land for the homes, they can be built pretty quickly. So a home that's started can be complete. Home that's applied for permission can be completed within 3-4 years. Doesn't help you in the first couple of years, and that's why I mentioned in answer to Diane's question when James followed up how we can help Diane in the short term is keeping the rents at a level so you can put money aside for a deposit, which is the big concern people like Diane have. They've not got the money for a deposit unless they've got bank of mum and dad to help them. Actually, house building with the will and with the financial support can happen pretty quickly. We've also got to require, by the way, those homes that are built have got to be catering for everybody. And you're what's called a key worker, intermediate housing. So we've got to make sure, that's my point.
The intermediate scheme every week, there are no houses for intermediate workers or key workers. Yeah. So that is just a figment of someone's imagination because I've never seen them. And I know no nurses in St Thomas's who have a key worker home. So clearly not enough.
No, and that's one of the reasons James told me off, but July the 4th matters. Right?
Can we make that the final mention of July the 4th, unless we're referring to American independence, please? Can I ask you a question? Would you mind? When you talk about reaching the end of your tether, really, with regard to the tensions of income and outgoings and not wanting to work for the NHS anymore, there's a lot going on there, Camilla. There's 2 or 3 different things going on there. What is it just wages with regard to your nursing that would make the rest of it tolerable?
It's wages, it's the way we're treated. I work in St Thomas's. We get abuse daily, weekly. We're not supported by the police, unfortunately. So there are so many aspects.
Nor are the police supported by the police.
I know, I hear it's very sad. Maybe sadder than my job, actually.
So there's just a sense there's a sense of decay that impacts on you both professionally and personally.
Yeah.
I can't wait for American Independence Day. Let us move on now. Let's take another question on housing, actually, because it is, I think, the most important issue. Before Avril is in Richmond, she's right at the back. If the microphone jockeys could make their way to the back of the building and try to identify Avril. Avril, wave your arms in the air or something like that, and don't speak until you've got a microphone. Are we good to go? Because before that, how did you get over there? Is that some sort of VIP section that nobody told me about? Before that, how specific to London is this? I know that housing is at a shortage everywhere, but is London the mothership of this problem?
Yeah.
Is it like 10 times worse than it is everywhere?
Yes, the average. So Camilla, the reason why your question is relevant to other Londoners is you will know the average cost of a home in London is £550,000. That's the average cost of a home in London. For a 1-bed property in London, you can get a 3-bed property in most other parts of the country. It's an acute problem at London. And that's one of the reasons why we've got a massively increased supply of housing in London. What we don't want is people like you deciding to leave London. You've talked about maybe stop being a nurse in the hospital, which is obviously a loss to the NHS. But you live in London is a loss to our city as well. And also, my concern is once you leave, you may never come back because equity rises when you've got a property in London. If you've left, obviously the price in London carry on rising, and the price of the property you've bought outside may not rise as much. And so that's why I'm really keen to make sure we crack this to keep people like you and Diane in London for the reasons that are obvious.
Thank you. Please stay. Don't leave. Avril, what's your question?
Thanks, James. It's how will more accessible housing be built when housing tends to be built upwards to protect our green open spaces? And I mean fully accessible for everyone with all kinds of disabilities.
Yeah, Avril, thank you for your question. So there's something called the London Plan. So the London Plan is a document that people who build homes, developers, have to follow. But before a council gives permission for a home to be built, they've got to make sure that a plan is in accordance with the London Plan. And the London Plan, you'll be reassured to know, requires a certain percentage of new homes to be accessible. And there's a definition that's wider than the building regs definition. That includes the size of doorways and so forth. And it's really important to reassure you that the new homes are accessible up to a percentage. The problem is, Avril, that the older homes also need to be retrofitted to make sure they're accessible to people who are disabled, because it is an issue in relation to, more and more Londoners have issues of accessibility and disability. We need to make sure the homes that are being built are fit for everybody, including those who are disabled.
I presume it's hard enough for people without disabilities to find housing, as our other questioners have established this evening. It's an exacerbated problem.
It is, and in certain boroughs like in Richmond upon Thames, where we have our protected views, for example, and a lot of NIMBYism, it's quite difficult to find brownfield sites to build on. And as you said, Mr. Khan, the growing number of Londoners with disabilities is increasing constantly. And for that reason, more accommodation is needed and sooner. And tower blocks, we know from Grenfell, lessons learned, it has to be something we can escape from safely.
Yeah, actually, Avril, the good news is some of the most dense housing in London's only about 4 stories. So you're right, they don't need to be tower blocks to increase housing, but you're right, they've got to be accessible to everyone. And so what Avril talk about in Richmond, there's a protected view of St Paul's, and certain buildings can't be above a certain height. But we can, Avril, with the brownfield sites, but also the way you assemble land. So if a council owns a piece of land, H2, Network Rail owns a piece of land, TfL owns a piece of land, assemble them together to build the good quality affordable homes we need is not beyond the wit of us. And I'm really hopeful in the next 4 years we'll see a lot more examples of good housing for people like you and friends of yours.
Thank you. We move on now to the economy, London's economy specifically, and we'll take our first question from Sant, who is from Newham. Sant, what would you like to ask?
James,
Sant!
James, right, this is how it's going to stop. Mr. Khan produced a marketing board. Now,
yes.
This is going to be cut down to what is he going to do to protect and save Queen's Market in Newham?
There we
He's
go.
providing the cost of living, and he's providing fresh green fruit, all year round.
What is the threat, and what is the answer to Sant's question?
So I'm going to bring in Howard Dorber shortly, who saved Stratford Market just the last few weeks in relation to challenges they had. So Howard, do you want to come in?
Yeah, can you hear me? On Stratford Village Market, the market operator who'd been actually siphoning off quite a lot of money. I'm not saying that as an allegation, it's in their report and accounts to their parent company, and then decided to shut the market down with no notice to the traders. We actually were able to step in and give Newham the money to be able to reopen the market, and it's back in operation after 4 months shut. And those people suffered for 4 months. 60 traders back in operation, 120 jobs saved, market back working, and that's fantastic. We're a big supporter of markets across London. There are markets that need to be modernised and need to be improved, and there's always going to be some discussion where you've got a big development around a market site. But we are pro-markets. They provide a low barrier to entry to people who want to get into being a retailer, because you don't have to fit out a shop, you can have a short-term licence, so it's very important the market is part of the lifeblood of London.
What is the specific threat your market is facing?
Queen's Market is going to be subject to demolition,
right,
development, which Friends of Queen's Market has been imposing for the last 21 years. So it's
going pretty well then.
Well, only because we managed to stop it once.
Yeah.
So we keep the fight going. But the fact is, we have a lot of support as well. So consultations, they've done consultation. We challenge the consultations. They have not done proper consultation. Going back to the Stratford one,
yeah,
that was £700,000 came out of good growth. Now that is only guaranteed for 1 year, and there's a pull-out clause after 1 year. So how much confidence do the council feel that they can actually manage a market? Councils can't manage. They don't have the skill to manage markets. They just don't have it.
So you want sort of almost a quango, a local government level quango, where...
We have one. That's been created. It's a marketing board. That was created some years ago.
And is that working?
Well, it doesn't seem to be, because all the markets across London are being cut down.
Have you got a stall yourself? Are you a trader on the market?
No, I used to work in the market.
Okay, no, I'm just curious, because I mean they're incredibly important parts of communities, and the success in Stratford notwithstanding. We hear all the time, whether we're talking about youth crime or almost any issue on the list, we hear about how there are no hubs anymore. There are no community hubs. And until Sant asked that question, it hadn't occurred to me that markets are one of the few remaining places where you can have a chat with your neighbours and catch up with people that you went to school with, or just have a proper sense of community. So can you reassure him at all, Howard?
Well, what I can reassure you is I'll have a look at it. I mean,
were you aware of it?
I haven't been involved in the Queen's Market discussion.
You are now.
What I can say about the Stratford one is, do you know what? It was profitable, and that's what it was profitable when they were previous people running it. So yes, we've negotiated, because obviously Newham can't sign up to 15 years because that's public money and they couldn't risk it. So it's why we gave them the money to do it. The 1 year is in case it goes horribly pear-shaped. It already isn't going pear-shaped. The market's doing really well. We put in the guy who was managing it before, who's a really good guy, and we're also helping him out. We're helping out the traders with some advice. We're going down there in a couple of weeks' time. We're bringing the whole London Partners Grow London local team. We're going to make sure it works, because we want to make sure we get our money back, which we think we will. We think it'll be profitable. I think we'll do really well for the traders. But we'll talk to you later about Queen's Market and see what the issue is.
All right, you happy?
Can you say where you are when it finishes so we can find you?
You happy? Finally, someone's happy. Thank you. Thank you, mate. Another question on housing. We'll stay in Newham, actually, because that is where Lutfer comes from. Lutfer, what's your question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a great pleasure to see your talented team. I would like to ask you a question. How can you solve the young unemployed? Large number of young unemployed people are struggling to get a good job. And as I'm a small businessman, we are struggling to carry into business like a small business like me. In very hard time we are passing.
So what's your business?
Travel agent.
Travel agent?
Travel agent business in London, Green Street.
Okay. So I'm not sure if I can give you advice on how to run a travel agency, but it does give me a chance to talk about what Howard referred to, which is Grow London. So what we've done is this, sir. We've got lots of small businesses in London, like yours. Actually, more than 95% of Londoners work for a small business like yours. And so what we've done is we've set up an organisation called Grow London. They're part of London and Partners, who give bespoke advice to businesses like yours, how to grow, how to take on staff, how to market, and so forth. So if you just type into the website Grow London, we also do trade missions as well in relation to other businesses who want to get business from overseas, including investors as well. And we also don't just rely upon a website, have professional advisors who go out to the community to give you advice as well. So my advice to you would be, sir, to go to the Grow London website, get one of our advisors to come and see you to see how we can help you flourish and thrive.
How big a problem, how well measured is it? Because you get the usual rhetoric about lazy young people, but you also do hear genuine stories about people who are prevented from taking up full-time work because of their mental health. And then I don't know whether this has happened to you, but you do hear beyond anecdote stories of young people turning up for job interviews and telling the potential employer that they're only there in order to keep access to their welfare. So do we have a proper handle on how many young people who are not working with the right help and support could be?
Yes, well, first, we're talking for the sake of the point in generalisations.
Oh, no.
Well,
no, the total numbers wouldn't be a generalisation, but I suspect they're too hard to pin down.
Well, actually, no. Most young Londoners have got to get up and go to get an apprenticeship, go to university, get a job. So the vast majority are accredited themselves and their families and their communities. There is a small number who need support, and the jargon is soft skills. Right. And one of my mayors, Jules Piper's head, who does lots of work with the adult education sector to make sure young people are match fit for the job in relation to get up on time, how to do an interview. We also have mentors. David talked about some of the work we're doing with young people. We have mentors that support young people. We give careers advice because we want young people to flourish and thrive and fulfil their potential. There is a small number of people who've got mental ill health and other issues that stops them fulfilling their potentials, but we want to make sure they get the ladder of opportunity our city can provide them.
I think we can squeeze in one more from Sue, who is from Brent. Where's Sue? Thank you, Lutfer. Sue, what's your question?
Just to say, I really do support ULEZ, and I'm very pleased to go down to the centre of town, where I can breathe and where the traffic is not going to knock me down, because there's hardly any traffic. But my question is that I have somebody in my family who is very anti-ULEZ. They're trying to run a small business, and so I said, it seemed to me it would be very sensible if people who are running small businesses, 4 or 5 little shops, something like that, if they can get an annual permit, if there was some provision for them to get a permit which would allow them to park without the fear of getting fines all the time, because you can lose your day's work on parking fines. Now, I don't know if that's something
is that your purview, or is that individual council?
Let me explain.
It's also like people who are doing builders.
I understand.
It's a great idea, Sue. Thank you.
So the way it works is, Sue, you live in Brent. Brent is one of 33 different local authorities in London. There are 32 boroughs plus City of London Corporation. Each borough has its own rules when it comes to parking. 95% of the roads in London, 95% are controlled by the boroughs. Only 5% are controlled by TfL. So James said it's a great idea, but you need to get all 32 boroughs to agree to a one-size-fits-all permit. And if I tell you, we can't even agree all the boroughs to have rubbish collected on the same day or recycling done the same way, I'm not hopeful about persuading the 30
You can't collect the rubbish on the same day.
You could take glass on the same day, garden waste on the same day, those that goes to the landfill on the same day, but you can't.
Thank you, Sue. We're almost out of time, and I'm conscious that poor old Justine. Oh, for heaven's sake! Honestly, just take a couple of minutes off before home time. We haven't. Pardon? Right. Okay, mate. Okay. We should have an election, shouldn't we? I'm conscious that Justine Simons has not been heard from this evening, and just as your host, Justine, I'm very conscious of that. So I was looking at theatre tickets. Justine speaks on culture and the creative industries. Is there more that you can do to help people see shows where the tickets are currently going for? I think to see Tom Holland in Romeo and Juliet, I'd have to sell a kidney.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hot topic. There are a lot of expensive theatre tickets, but actually a quarter of West End tickets you can get for under 30 quid.
I can't, but I don't. I mean, I'm not thinking of me. I'm just students, younger people.
Yeah, the Royal Opera House does like £5 tickets. So does the Globe Theatre. So actually, a lot of the theatres and performance venues work really hard to offer an accessible price point. I think the other important thing is free stuff. We're really lucky in London that so many of our institutions and our galleries are free. If you go around the world, if you went to America, you'd be paying quite a lot to go to equivalent institutions. So There is a lot you can see for free. And then there's other things that we're doing that are free as well. So things like our London Borough of Culture, which is shining a spotlight on the culture of local boroughs. All of that's free as well. So there's a big free offer. I mean, you're right that the top end is expensive, but there's lots and lots of ways in which you can have a great time culturally in London.
And James, this weekend, Trafalgar Square, Saturday and Sunday, you can see for free great songs from musicals in the West End.
Okay. Final question. What about the nighttime economy? The idea now that it's a lot harder to go out in London after closing time than it was when I was a hip young raver. Yes, you might get stabbed, or a coconut might fall on your head. So maybe stay at home next year. Carry on.
Yeah, so London is obviously a great nighttime city, but there are challenges. Lots of businesses and venues say there are really big challenges faced. We've had Brexit, licensing challenge, cost of living, energy, a whole kind of plethora of challenges. So the things that we're doing is looking at where are the places we can really help. So, for example, we've been trialling this idea, a great acronym, NTES, Nighttime Enterprise Zones, and that is all about businesses working together to open later, and working with local authorities, later licensing, all of that working together. And we've seen that in those pilots, spending has gone up 70%, and footfall has gone up, I think, 60%. So they've been really successful pilots. So we're hoping to roll those out. The other thing we're doing is, we have a little mini team at City Hall. It's called the Culture at Risk team. I nicknamed it the Bat Phone. And it's a kind of, a hotline and a service where when businesses in the nighttime economy and culture are really struggling, they can call up and get a bit of help and advice. And it might be licensing, it might be business rates, it might be how to negotiate with your landlord, really practical things. So since 2020, we've had 1,500 cases. So that's a really practical way that we can help. So we're trying to look, where is it that we've got a bit of agency and leverage, and where can we bring people together to fix some of the problems that are happening in the night time? Because, it's a really important part of the economy. It's worth 26 billion to London. 1.3 million people work at night in London, so it's a big priority for us.
Fantastic. I'm glad that I found some time for you at the end.
Thank you.
Because that is it pretty much for tonight. Thank you to you, most of you, the audience, for all of your questions this evening. I'd also like to thank the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, his deputy mayors, and I'd like to commiserate with whoever you're going home to tonight, sir. As if you are, as well as those of you watching on Global Player. If you'd like to watch back this event, it will be uploaded to YouTube. This has been the 20... Well, you can't, because it... Good grief. Could we... Well, Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you for coming, and have a lovely evening.
We've been trying, but we can't move forward. Conversations always turn into fights. Kind of worried that there's no